There can be no faith in God until there is a faith in one another. There has to be a revival of a faith in one another. People must believe in the ones that they can see before they're going to believe in the one that they cannot see. If I can't lift you up whom I can see, how am I going to lift up the one that I cannot see? You see, most child psychologists would tell you that the pain and the problems that people face today usually stem from somewhere in the past that there was a lack of affirmation, a lack of acceptance. Because worlds deteriorate, my friend, when people feels like nobody cares. But something happens to people. Something happens when you feel like that there's really somebody that believes in you, that will bring to you that we love you, that we care about you. They could care less about what you know until they know what you care. If you care, that's all that really matters. Because let me tell you, folks, we're living in a world today to where there are people so disillusioned and they're just waiting for some Jonathan to come along and give them a message of affirmation and acceptance. And this brings us today to Saturday's story. Her name was Miss Thompson. She was a 5th grade teacher. She always loved her students and she treated them all, she felt like, the same until little Teddy came along. Little Teddy sat in the first row of seats and he always slumped. His hair always needed combing. His clothes were always wrinkled. His face always needed washing. His shoes always needed polishing. Teddy slumped around. And it was almost like Miss Thompson sort of, she loved her students, but there was something about Teddy. She just could not make herself like him. It was almost like she took joy when she would write down in the red marker and put F on his paper. And yet, when she began to look, because the school had given her a survey of each student because they wanted her to know how they fared in every class up to hers. And so, of course, Teddy's was the last one. And of course, she began to read, and the 1st grade teacher said Teddy was the brightest student she had. And she couldn't believe it. 2nd grade teacher said Teddy was very smart, but yet was becoming sort of isolated. The 3rd grade teacher said Teddy, he used to play with the kids, but now he's sort of reserved. And the 4th grade teacher said Teddy's pulled himself in his shell. His grades have become have fallen off. And instead of making good, he's now looked like he is just barely getting by. And then she read the reason. Teddy's mother had terminal cancer, was only given just a few months to live. And the father, of course, had to work several jobs just to provide for the family. And Teddy, of course, was suffering. And in the note it said, if somebody doesn't intervene, Teddy won't make it. Teddy will fail, and Teddy will slowly but surely find himself sort of like David in the wood of Ziph, running from an unseen enemy, trying to hide just to make it. Something happened. You see, it was almost Christmas time now, and the students were bringing in their gifts from Miss Thompson. They were in bright packages, and many of them were wrapped so neatly, until she saw one and she knew it was from Teddy. It was in a brown paper bag. The other students were laughing and making fun because that's what they did to Teddy. And he just pulled himself more and more and further away. And so to redeem things, she took the brown paper bag, and when she did, out fell a gaudy rhinestone bracelet with some of the rhinestones missing. A bottle of cheap perfume without a fourth of the bottle of perfume in it. And the students began to laugh. Of course, Miss Thompson put on the bracelet, and She put some of the perfume on. And so, of course, she started opening the other gifts. And it wasn't long, the bell rang, and it was time for the kids to go home for Christmas break. They all left, except little Teddy. Little Teddy didn't leave. He walked up to Miss Thompson, and he looked at her with tears in his eyes. He said, "You look like my mama, and you smell like her too." And so little Teddy dropped his head. Miss Thompson grabbed him. She pulled him close. Something happened that day. Little Teddy walked out of the room, but Miss Thompson, she knelt down by her chair, and she said, "God, if you'll help me today, I'm not going to teach reading, writing, arithmetic. Today, I made up my mind I'm going to teach children, and there's a lot of difference." She made up her mind that she was going to make a difference in little Teddy's life. And guess what? She did. Miss Thompson, when school took back in after Christmas break, she'd stop by and get donuts. She'd run by Teddy's house. She'd make sure his clothes were not wrinkled. She would iron. She would bring him a little milk to drink, because normally he had nothing, no food, till lunch at school. She would carry him to school. She took special interest, and she began to see that his mind was so sharp. He was so intellectual, and he began to grow and began to learn. When Teddy left her class, and it was no wonder that a couple years later, there was a note slipped under the door. A note that as she opened it, tears came in her eyes, said, "Miss Thompson, this is Teddy. I just want you to know that you were the greatest teacher that I've ever had in my whole life." Said, "Without you, I really don't know, Miss Thompson, if I would have made it." It's no wonder that when he had graduated from high school, valedictorian of the class, she received another letter saying, "Thank you, Miss Thompson, once again. I will never, ever, ever forget what you've done for me as a teacher. You were the greatest. I thank you." It was not alarming in the fact that 4 years later, she received another letter from Teddy saying, "Miss Thompson, I want to thank you. You've encouraged me to continue in my education. It's been very difficult. I've had to work several jobs. My father passed away last year, and I've been alone, and it's been tough, but I've continued my education, and I'm going to continue further." It's no wonder when she got the next letter, it was, "Miss Thompson, I'm graduating. I'm graduating the top of my class. I just want to thank you for all that you've done in the investment in my life." Signed, Theodore M. Stallard, MD, Doctor of Medicine. Was it no coincidence the next year she received a special delivery package and letter? Said, "Miss Thompson, I've met a young lady. I'd like for you, if you would please, if you would come and you would sit where my mother would have sat, because without you, I would not have made it." Miss Thompson went to the wedding. She wore the gaudy rhinestone bracelet. Oh yeah, and she put some of that cheap smelling perfume on. And Teddy, when he hugged her, he could only smile, and a tear gathered in his eye. And he looked at her and said, "Miss Thompson, you were the greatest teacher I ever had." And she stopped and said, "No, Teddy. No, Teddy. You're the one that taught me. You're the one that taught me that I should look beyond just a job, just what I was supposed to do, and reach out to the heart of my children and to people, because everyone needs that touch, that special touch of affirmation and acceptance in their life." You see, that is what God is calling some of you to be, more than just a church member, just to be more than just a so-called Christian, but to be someone that will just step into the wood of Ziph and find someone who's down today and speak a word of encouragement, of acceptance. You see, people could care. They could care less what church you go to, what denominational flag you fly under, or even what doctrine you believe. They really want to know, do you love me and do you care? Because if you will, my friend, you will win people to the kingdom of God. I thank you for tuning in to Saturday Story.